The Future of Coaching is Team Coaching podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, an international professional body which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide.
We're your hosts, Georgina Woudstra and
Allard Jong, that's me.
We're coaches, writers, and the founders of the Team Coaching Studio.
In this series, we explore the exciting, dynamic, and fast-growing discipline of team coaching.
Our ambition is to contribute to the quality and impact of team coaching worldwide and to share insights and experience that will inspire you to keep developing as a team coach.
Hello, everyone. It's one of those days, but we're back. We're back with episode 5 of this series of podcasts that we labeled "The Future of Coaching is Team Coaching." As usual, Georgina is here too. Thank God.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about preparing for team coaching.
Yeah, what do we mean by that?
What do we mean by preparing for team coaching? And it's a broad topic, actually. It sounds quite simple, almost like you could just have a checklist of questions or something. But hopefully today we'll cover some of the rich ground of the considerations, really, in terms of preparing for team coaching.
It sounds a bit like, let's put our team coaching suits on.
I like that idea. Now we're talking about it, preparing for team coaching. Does sound simple, but there's a lot to it. So in today's episode, I think we'll be talking about quite a lot of dimensions of preparing for team coaching. Now, it strikes me when I say that, Al, that it could be overwhelming, because team coaching sometimes is. There's so many things to think about. So for anyone listening, my encouragement would be just to take the bits that are useful. Don't try and capture every single thing. But it's more about possibilities of areas to be mindful of when preparing for team coaching. But let's start with this thought about what do we mean by preparing for team coaching, Al? What does it mean to you?
All right, so maybe this is useful. Let's go on this imaginary journey with a team. And so we might imagine that somewhere early on we have some exploratory meetings with whoever is commissioning the work. And after that initial conversation, we feel that this is indeed something that is up our alley and that might be adding value to the team. Then a next step on our imaginary journey might be to actually sit down with the team for a bit of a chemistry session, so to speak. And suppose that goes well too. Eventually, you're going to be asking yourself the question of, well, is this team ready to be coached, and am I ready, to be their coach? And I think to answer those questions, there's like you said, there's a lot of different considerations that we can look at, but maybe we can unpack a few in the time that we have today.
Yeah, great. And so you were talking about, am I ready to be coached? Is the team ready to be coached? So that's sort of the self and the team lens. There's also the situational, the organizational lens. Is the organization ready? Does it have the bandwidth? Does it have the understanding of team coaching? Does it have the commitment to the process to really engage in team coaching? Are the stakeholders going to engage? So quite a few considerations there. Before we get into that, what comes to mind for me is I suppose for me, a fundamental ethical consideration that sometimes it's easy to forget when we're asked to coach a team. Is the team up for this? And if we think about one-to-one coaching, I think most of us who do one-to-one coaching know that coaching is voluntary. It's not remedial. It's not something you do to someone. And in fact, it really only works with that bilateral and mutual understanding that's a collaborative partnership that we voluntarily engage in. And I see it the same way in team coaching. How about you? Would you work with a team where you're told that they need fixing?
No, but you're absolutely right. We need to have permission to coach. Permission to coach, sir.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, it's I've sure been with Well, one team comes to mind that was, an assignment that it wasn't a direct assignment. It came through a coaching agency, one of those kind of intermediaries, and all I needed to do was to show up and start coaching, because the whole project was labeled as a team coaching kind of assignment. And I forgot that I wrongly assumed I had permission to coach, therefore, but I clearly didn't, and it was so it was a very clunky kind of start to a journey with that team.
That's really interesting. So if you didn't have permission to coach at the start, what did you have permission to do, or what were they hoping for?
I think I had permission to run a series of workshops.
Yeah, I've had that experience too, where the expectation is that you're going to bring in, as coach, you're going to bring content and conceptual frameworks, and you're going to teach them those frameworks. Yeah. But somehow they've got it hooked onto the word coaching, or the broker or agency has liked that word. And it can create real confusion as to what we're there to do. Because often workshops in organisations are not voluntary, or they're kind of expected as part of your career progression. So I think that ethical consideration of team coaching is voluntary. It needs enough willingness to be coached and openness to be coached for us to be able to show up and coach, rather than run a workshop that you've talked about.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we started with that, that ethical kind of foundation. And from there, I suggest that we maybe take a look at a model that we're fond of talking about, and you may have heard us talk about it, because we're getting old and we keep talking about the same things. But it surely is something that's been really useful, I think, for different people wanting to learn about team coaching on our programs. And we often, it's called STS, the three letters, STS, which stand for self, team, and situation. Let's unpack this a little bit more.
Yeah, so if we start out with self, when a team coaching assignment comes up, I'm going to be thinking about, do I have capacity for this at the moment? Do I have the time? Am I interested in this team? I've certainly had people call me about team coaching and start to give me a brief, and I feel somewhat disconnected from it, and it doesn't appeal. I've also had situations like you, Al, where a broker or someone else has written the proposal and is giving me the format and structure. It's like I'm being handed the prescription and I'm the pharmacist that needs to deal out the medicine. And I find it difficult to work that way, because I have my own approach in which I have agency and I can work successfully. So do I want to take on those kinds of scenarios?
Yeah.
And then there's, psychologically, what's going on in my life? Do I have the headspace, the energy, the resilience that it takes to coach this team at the moment? So there's lots of considerations under self. What about the T and the S?
Yeah. So, and to self, I'll come to that in just a second. To self, I'm reminded of some work that David Clutterbuck did around team coaching readiness. And under the S of self, he also talks about, is there a possible conflict here? Do I have, really close relations with certain members of this team? Or, I just want to make sure there's no conflicts of interest when I start the work. Now, that sounds very obvious, and it's probably linked to ethics again, too, but sometimes these things crawl up on you and you...
Great example.
So, about the team, well, there's so much we could say about the team being ready or not, but are they committed to being coached?
Yeah.
Does the team have, an effective leadership structure in place?
Yes.
I'm always wary of teams that may be expecting us to rescue them.
Yes. Yeah.
And definitely fallen into that drama triangle kind of trap before. Do they have the resources? The time? Is it a healthy enough team? Like at what point is the team so dysfunctional that you go, well, I really don't think they would benefit from coaching, and it might actually do more harm than good. And ideally, another consideration there is, does the team recognize its own need for change?
Yes. And another one for me in there is size. I was once asked, and I've frequently been asked, to coach teams at like 17, 18, 20 people. And I'm not convinced that team coaching is the best approach for that size group. That it really requires facilitation, because you need to manage the process so much. So it's way harder for the team's learning and focus to be on the process when you've got such a large group and wanting all voices to be involved and included. So sometimes I think there's a need to do some consultancy work up front, or some design work. And I usually think about the Waggaman-Hackman 6-team conditions in that sense of thinking about the team design and getting the team set up for success. So that might come to mind under the team frame of STS.
That's a really useful, I know, yes, it's not normally used as a framework for determining team readiness, but it sure fits it sure fits the bill. So, right, does the team have the right, is it a team composed of the right people?
Yeah. Is it the right size? Do they know who's in the team? Does it have a clear purpose?
Does it have a clear purpose? Does it have a sound structure? And then maybe the last point of those 6 conditions, one of the last points of the 6 conditions that talks about a supportive context.
Yes.
Takes us right to the last S of STS, which, remember, stands for situation. So, are the right structures and systems in place in the larger situation, in the larger system, to promote great teamwork and not create any obstacles to the work that we want to be doing with the team?
I have an example of that where I was asked to work with a team where the organisation is a private equity-backed organisation. So they were building up towards the transaction, which is the point where it's sold and lots of top team members make a load of money and they all go, hey, we've been successful. And but in the build-up towards the transaction, they thought, it'd be great to have some coaching to think about how we, make sure we're successful here, really give it our best shot and make sure this transaction happens. But in talking with them, the situation was so demanding of them, they needed to spend so much time on the elements of the transaction that they really didn't have any diary time or appetite to commit to the coaching, even though it sounded like a great idea at the time. So the situation was larger than their presenting need for any team coaching. So yeah, there's a little bit about STS.
Yeah, very useful. Really, then maybe one way to think about, is team coaching indeed the best intervention kind of, the best modality or the best intervention style, or does this team need something else? Now, I know that in earlier episodes of this podcast, I think in episodes 1 and 2, we talked a little bit about the different modalities of working with teams and what the pros and cons of each of those models were.
Yeah, we looked at consulting, facilitating, training, team coaching. Then could also be team mentoring, all different modalities with different outcomes. And I find that a really useful conceptual framework for thinking through, is team coaching what's needed right now? It sounds like a simple thing, but if not, we can really end up with 2 different agendas going on in the room that can stymie any good work being done. So that's an important one to consider in terms of readiness, Yeah,
because if we conclude that they are, or together with the team, if we conclude that they are ready for team coaching, that means that they are ready for an inside-out approach rather than an outside-in approach, and that they are ready for us to take on the role of awareness agent, awareness raging agent, and of a responsibility or accountability kind of creator.
Yeah, so we're generating awareness and the team is responsible for the work. And not every team's ready for that, especially if they are unclear how the flow of power and authority is going to work in the team, for example. That may be unclear. Yeah, so awareness and responsibility is really key, I think, in preparing for team coaching. I think about this a lot. Think about, is the team ready to take responsibility for what they become aware of through the process? And if I don't think that through enough and really contract around that, it's a really subtle shift that can happen where I find that the team are expecting me to be responsible for the awareness that gets raised in the team coaching.
Yeah.
We've got an example of where a team wanted, 3 areas of development, 3 areas of focus for the team coaching, and work through one area of focus and then another across 2 days. And at the end of it, they didn't feel like they had got far enough in that work. And part of that was because I think the team were holding the coach responsible for the outcomes of the work, for doing the work, rather than the coach holding the team responsible for doing the work in that scenario.
Yeah.
A little bit like you run a workshop and then you get happy sheets at the end saying, to what degree was your need met? Well, of course, you can meet that need much more effectively if you've got a pre-planned design and you've got content that you're going to teach. But team coaching doesn't work that way.
Yeah, you know what? And that also takes me back to 1 or 2 podcasts when we talked about contracting. And it just, again, underlines the importance of clearly contracting for our role and their role.
Yes.
To me, it's always like, and I had this in my individual, I had or have this in my individual coaching too. I've always thought of coaching as a bit of a game, that 2 entities play, right? A coach and a client, whether that client, again, is an individual or a team. We're playing a game, but both parties in that game have to understand what the rules of the game are.
Yes.
Because otherwise you end up, it's like playing, have you ever played Monopoly with the kids when they were...
I sure have.
When they were little? Yeah. It doesn't work because, they have their own rules of how to play the game well, anyway, good memories, but not good for team coaching.
That's a great metaphor, so that we know the rules of the game. And one of those rules is, to what degree is the work going to be facilitated, or to what degree is it emergent?
Yeah.
And it might be different for each session as you go through that team coaching journey that you were talking about earlier on in this podcast. But if we're facilitating, then we are leading in that moment. We're leading in the team. And if we do that enduringly, we do that ongoingly throughout the team coaching, then we're potentially undermining the role of leadership or the leader in the team, whose role is to manage the process and conditions that create team success, team effectiveness. So we become a leader if we hold that facilitation for too long. So at some point, coaching, we're really looking for it to become more emergent, where we're drawing attention to their own process. But if their only frame of reference and expectation is that you're going to run a workshop like the example you had, then there's 2 different rules of a game playing. They're both approaching it differently. They're looking to you and you're looking to them for the next move.
Yeah. And even then, with all of that taken into account, so and you start the work and you... I'm reminded here of a situation that was related to me earlier on in the week by another coach, who everything was clear. The team was ready to be coached, and the team would welcome this emergent kind of approach to doing the work. But as the work started, it became clear that the team was not healthy enough. There's that word again, and actually, the coach had to back up a little bit, recontract in the moment, and take on more of a facilitative style.
Yeah.
Because in that particular situation, too much working too emergently was detrimental to the psychological safety, the little psychological safety that existed in the team. And the team felt safer when the coach became a little bit more present and a little bit more robust.
Yeah. Emergence needs a safe container that's created through boundaries, through contracting, and through the presence of the coach, the safe holding presence of the coach. Yeah. And if that's not established and we try to work emergently, it can make the team feel very unsafe, which of course shuts down learning. So it is a balance to be worked with there. If there's low psychological safety, then it's going to be really hard to create a learning environment without that psychological safety being increased. And that's where our attention will need to go on how we build that psychological safety so that the team can get in and do some real coaching work together.
Yeah.
So you could say, in a way, the level of psychological safety could be another kind of gauge of the conditions and the team's readiness for coaching.
You know what's coming up for me? I think what might be really useful for people listening to this is that at one point, not right now probably, but at one point they take out a piece of paper and divide it into two columns. And in the first column, that they think about that they create their own checklist of assessing readiness, but maybe by means of a few questions. What are the questions that you would ask of the team, of the situation, and of those two? To get a better feel for, is this team ready? And then in the second column, maybe list what your own conditions are for engaging in the work. What are your go, no go kind of criteria? And that can be very personal, but so it's useful to have that and then refer back to it.
Yeah. So some examples of what I'd want to see in self in the team and in the situation is there's some clear work to be done. I call it units of work, as you know, but there's some clear coaching topics that are collectively held that the team wants to work on. That's important to me. Otherwise, it's very difficult to establish any kind of meaningful contract for change. Yeah. It's really important to me to be clear on what the role of the team leader is and how they see their role as distinct from the role of team members. So I'm working with their power and authority structure. It's really important to me that they all commit to the sessions and that those sessions are prioritized. It's also important to me that they do the work between sessions and they commit to that work between sessions, because of course coaching is all about sustainability. It's not about just rocking up at events. So there's some of the things that go through my thought process in team and situation. The stakeholders going to be engaged in this and are supportive of the process, and what does that look like? And then for self, I need, it's because of my advancing years, I find I need to feel a sense of excitement or energy at the prospect of working with a team, whereas I used to sometimes discount that and go, well, that doesn't matter, I'll find it when I start the work. But these days I really need to feel that appetite for working with a team and interest in what they do. And I need to feel I've got the headspace for it, the psychological space for doing the work. And that my role, the way I execute my role, the way I approach team coaching seems like a good fit for the team. So there's some examples of what I might put on that checklist. Is there anything you'd add to that for you?
The number one red flag for me, so the number one, no-go is if I have an inkling or more than an inkling that that this team wants me to fix it.
Yes.
Or that they expect and this is very common, that they expect an instant solution, like a quick fix.
Oh, like we've got deep cultural problems, loads of politics. We're very short of money, we're very short of time, and we've got these people infighting. And can we tackle that in a 3-hour session next Tuesday?
Exactly.
Sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Instant coffee.
Yeah, you can probably tell from that. I've had a few of those offers over time.
Yes. Oh, and by the way, it's next week, and it's 600 miles away from home. But can you do it?
Yeah.
So before we bring this to a close, I just wanted to spend 2 minutes, if it's okay, not more, on maybe some specific challenges for in-house team coaches, because there's more and more in-house team coaching happening in these large organizations, and we're certainly talking to more and more in-house team coaches. So, and often we're confronted with the reality that, often we're confronted with the fact that their reality is different from us as external team coaches. So I'm thinking, STS again, self-team in situation, what might be different for them?
Yes, I guess sometimes the in-house team coaches are more clear on the burning platform or the need for team coaching and have a great understanding of the cultural context and how the flow of power works in an organization. That's a tremendous advantage to have that knowledge. I think some of the challenges can be that you're salaried, you're paid to be in a role as an in-house team coach. And sometimes that brings with it an expectation that you will bring about change. And I think that, a simple frame, if we go back to the beginning of this podcast, is the team who do the work. It's voluntary, and it's about creating awareness and the team taking actions. That can clash with a coach coming in who wants to change the team because the team needs to change. It's like that fix-it idea or remedial work. And I think that can be very challenging for team coaches, because you're kind of stuck between the agenda of what the organization wants from the team and maybe the team's appetite and what they want.
Yeah, and then it's so easy to get entangled or to already be entangled in the power and authority games.
Yes.
The office politics. And in supervision the other day, this case came up of an in-house team coach who had been working with a team already, a team that then somewhere, during the team coaching process, changed its leader. A new leader came on with completely different expectations. And so how do you deal with that if at the same time you get a lot of pressure from an HR department that says, well, you have to continue to work with this team, and the new leader says, well, I'm not sure if I really want to continue with team coaching for this team. So where does that leave you? Whose interests at that point do you, as the in-house team coach, whose interests do you choose to represent?
I think that's such a profound question. Whose interests are you representing? Because you can find yourself representing the team leader, the team, HRD or L&D, the chief executive or board, various stakeholders, all who have a different agenda for what they want to change in the team as a result of team coaching. So whose voice are you representing? And how do you stay out of that entanglement and create alignment around the focus for the team coaching work? And I think that's where the art of it comes in, is navigating the multiple stakeholder perspectives and needs, not representing any one, but finding a way to get clear focus for the work that the team wants to work on, where there's enough voluntary appetite for that work. Big topic. We could talk the whole podcast about that, couldn't we?
We did say at the beginning of today's episode, and I hope we've illustrated that there really is a lot to team coaching readiness, even though it sounds simple, and that there's a lot of different considerations that may show up. So again, the invitation here for anybody listening is to be really clear on what your own considerations are, and go from there, and then hopefully get to the point where the team is ready to be coached.
Yeah. And in addition to the conditions that you've talked about, I would really encourage coaches to not make the mistake that I have made, which is to see team coaching as the single tool in my toolbox that I use for everything. Sometimes facilitation or training or some advice, some consulting is the best tool in the toolkit for the presenting need. And I think it can be tempting to create a fixed team coaching system with fixed steps. And I always start at this point, and this is the program that I process you through. But that may not meet the team's needs. So treat every team as unique and fresh, and really think about how you meet them where they're at, and then support them as they go on a journey of growth, of learning growth and change. So talking of change.
Well, yes, that's a beautiful segue. So the next time, and we do hope you'll join us again, the next time we'll talk about what we call a real technology for change. So we're starting the work with the team. How do we now help the team realize the change that they are aiming for? Until next time, I'd say.
Until next time. Looking forward to our final podcast episode, and hope this has been useful for you. And by all means, get involved with our community and with discussion around team coaching to unpack these really fascinating topics some more. That's it for now. Look forward to the next one.
Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. I'm Georgina Woudstra.
And I am Allard Jong. For 20 years, the AC's purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organizations, and society at large.
To find out more about the AC and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or explore our webpage at associationofcoaching.com. There you can keep up to date with our latest podcast episodes, enjoy the wealth of digital learning offerings, and gain insight from the Coaching Perspectives magazine.